Hi, I'm Sha Rene. I was talking to some friends and some family a few weeks ago, right before I got married, and I was just telling them stories, and everyone said that I should just talk. Like, what's that mean? Just talk. Okay, I'm gonna just talk. I take subject matters and I place theories on those subjects, and I put in a spiritual context with everything. And with doing that, it presents itself an enlightening conversation with whoever I'm talking to. So I spent some time in my store, Chakra Sha Studio, sort of life coaching people, but I wouldn't call myself a life coach. I would just call myself a person who likes to give really good advice. So, I'll tell you a couple of stories and you tell me what you think. If it inspires you to get up and go out and do something, if it inspires you to, at least talk about God, then I've done my job, right? So, here we go. I was talking to someone, the other day, and they asked me how I could remember something. It was just something that was on the forefront of my brain. And I have this thing I do with my mind. I ask God to give me the power to retain the information I need to retain and let go of things that I need to let go. And what do I mean by let go of those things that I need to let go? So something happened that was really terrible or horrible, and it was just not a good thing. Like maybe kids beat me up in school, which they did, but I learned some lessons with that. Like there was this one girl who beat me up in high school, and I actually had gotten my face slashed. It was just really bad. And the fact that I can see now was a blessing of God. The fact that nothing happened to me. I have a few permanent scars that stayed with me the rest of my life, but for many, many years I held it. And so I'd go back into town and I'd feel bad. Like I'd pass the school where it happened and I'd feel bad. And so someone told me one day the girl that beat me up died. And I go, wow. Like, she didn't make it to the age that I am. Like, for whatever reason, she didn't make it to the age that I am. So that day, I let it go. So I use that as a lesson to say, don't hold on to something you don't need to hold on to. You can let it go. And once you do, your mind and heart is free to do whatever it needs to do that God says it's supposed to do. Now, you're going to hear me say God a lot. And if that bothers you, then I wouldn't say walk on. I'd say sit here through a little bit of disturbing conversation. Because I'm going to talk a lot about God. Right now, I'm not quoting scriptures from the Bible, though I have an open one right here in my home. I have two open ones, actually. I have my open Bible that stays in my house, and I have my brother who passed away. I have his open Bible right next to mine. I have a Quran. I have a Bhagavad Gita. I have the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And I have a Torah. So what does that say? That says I go to those particular wisdom of words and I use them in my life. And so I have a memory bank, and everybody has a memory bank, and it's up to you to what you keep in it. So I have these folders in my head, and in my head there's a God folder. And there might be a subfolder. So think of a hard drive in your computer. It's your C drive. And there are all these folders. And it's up to you on the order of what you decide to copy into that drive, what you decide to delete off that drive, what you decide to maybe store away or put in a desktop somewhere because you might need it right away. So think of your brain and your heart as a computer. And what would you do? What would be the most important thing to you? Well, I have a God folder. And that's the most important folder that's on that computer. And boy, I've backed it up quite a few times. I continue to back it up. And I continue to put new things for the God folder in the subfolders. So there's Jesus got a folder. Krishna got a folder. Buddha got a folder. Right? Muhammad has a folder. Martin Luther King has a folder. Nelson Mandela has a folder. And maybe someone in my family who did something special for me has a folder. And that person is in the God folder. It might also be in some other folder. I love electronics. When I was a kid, my dad taught me how to do cable testing because he was an electronic engineer. He fixed radios and TVs and stereos, and here I am 8 years old. And it's 1968. Yeah, I'm telling my age. And I'm cable testing. But at the same time, my mom taught me how to sew. So I'm in the kitchen and I'm sewing. So I have an art folder because I'm an artist. God made me an art folder, right? So since I'm an artist, I've got a painting folder. I paint. I have a crochet folder. I crochet. I have a sewing folder. I sew and design. I have a singing folder because I sing. I have a writing folder because I write. So there's books behind me. I love to read. I have these folders. Now, what I decide to retain, I have a civil rights folder. I'll tell you about my civil rights folder. There's a lot of stuff in that folder because of who I am, who I've become, who I started out as, and who I can strongly say, well, I can be till the day I die. Yeah, there's a civil rights folder. Because of things that happened to me in my life, there's a civil rights folder. So I'll tell you a story about the civil rights folder. It's just kind of cool. I guess it's around the 90s or so. I'm living in New Brunswick, and there's a local bus where, you know, the people who don't have that much money take to go to work in the morning because they don't have cars, so they take the bus. There was a time where we wanted to be on a bus. There's a time now where you really don't want to be in a bus. You want to be in a car, right? So we fought to be in a bus. Now we're fighting to have a car. So make a long story short, I'm going to New York City to work from New Brunswick, New Jersey. And I get in this bus this morning, and it's a bus that goes to New York, so I can go to work on Wall Street. And there is a woman who doesn't look like me. She's an older woman with gray hair, but she doesn't look anything like me. I sit next to her on the bus. She jumps up out of her seat, and she's like, oh, like all scared and stuff. I'm going, okay, either there's something wrong here, or she got up because she was uncomfortable sitting next to me. So, I mean, I'm like, do I stink? I'm like, am I funky? Like, what's the problem? Right? And so I said, let me test this. Let me see if she got up because I'm black. Let me just get up out of my bus seat, go sit right next to her because she moved into an open seat that also had an open seat next to her. So I get up and I go sit in the seat next to her. She proceeds to jump up again out of her seat, and I watched her go jump to another seat. Now, either she could have just been uncomfortable because she wanted to sit alone, or was it that problem with the big R word, right? That ends in a T, sometimes ends in an M, depending on how you say the word. So I stand up and I go into my civil rights folder. And in that civil rights folder was something I learned when I was in high school. And it starts, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice. And I know the whole thing. And I know every word of the preamble. Because when I learned the preamble, I would never forget it as long as I live. So when I have something in my memory bank, I pull it out of a folder. And I use it when I need to. So that day, I used it. And I stood up and I recited the preamble on that bus going to work in New York in the morning. And I got a standing ovation. Not just for knowing the words, but for using it when I needed to. For pulling it out of my memory bank. For using it when I needed to. And everyone's clapping. And I'm tearing. And they're clapping. And they're going, yeah, you go, girl. You know the whole thing? Yeah, I know the whole thing. Because it meant something to me. So use your mind that God's given you to retain the things you need to retain. Pull them out when you need to pull them out. Store them when you need to store them. Put them where they need to be and use them when you need them. If it's not important, you just leave it sort of in the back of your mind. But sometimes something that you think is not important will come back up. And when it does, you just go back into that drive and you find a place for it. Right? So there's lots of things in my memory bank. And I'll tell you some more sometime. That was my civil rights folder. Thank you for listening.